Good afternoon, I'm Grant and this is Carrie from NH, and today we'll be presenting the Collingwood Football Club Visitor Centre.
So before we get into it, could I get a show of hands from the jury of the audience who might be a Collingwood fan? No. Sorry for your loss on Thursday. So whether you're a fan or not, you'd know that Collingwood fans are prideful of their teams and their community. So at the time of the briefing for this project, the club had 8 different teams across AFL, AFLW, netball, wheelchair football and community AFL. So the client really wanted to emphasise that it's a community that makes the team, not just, it's a community that makes the club, not just the teams. So the club has a rich history dating back to 1892 with an archive of artefacts throughout the evolution of the organisation. The client wanted a visitor centre to draw in a broader audience compared to what their former visitor centre was offering. So the visitor centre is adjacent to the original Olympic swimming pool by Kevin Ball and John and Phyllis Murphy and Peter McIntyre with engineer Bill Irwin. So part of the brief for this project was to acknowledge the significant heritage of the Olympic swimming pool, which is also a legacy that the club is a part of as it houses their administration and training functions. And together, all these facilities form the club's headquarters.
The club's headquarters is on Wurundjeri country at the edge of the Barong. It's embedded within the sports precinct and with the Melbourne Park across the road and Emmy Park as its neighbour. So for a way for us to translate the client's aspirations into the design was to see the visitor centre as an interface between the club, the public and the sports precinct. For us, this project really grappled with how, with a very tight budget, can we provide for long-term regenerative use for an organisation with evolving and growing community connections. The project needed to be well defined but generic enough to allow curatorial flexibility in the future. Given the disjointed existing spatial planning, it was important for us to find an idea that organised the internal volume into legible and functional spaces that created strong connections with its surround. Using the idea of connection as a basis, we began drawing axes through the visitor centre, from Melbourne Park through the courtyard and the river beyond, and from the original swimming pool through to the function space adjacent. We used a kit of fundamental architectural parts, the wall, floor and ceiling, to define these relationships through the interior. 4 primary walls define a central exhibition space with the auxiliary exhibition wings sitting behind and between the adjacent buildings and programme. The central space and exhibition wings are then unified with consistent horizontal floor and ceiling plans. Lighting also played a key role in emphasising this ordering of the space. Flat cabinetry lighting highlight the display walls and emphasise them as the focal and ordering elements within the space. Lighting also helped highlight the transparency and connective layering between the central exhibition and the gathering spaces.
In terms of materiality, we considered a monochrome material palette as a backdrop to the client's exhibition and retail overlay with other feature elements within the space. And to create focal points within the space, we drew from warm timber tones as a point of contrast to the black and white. For the floor, we went through several iterations of costing and samples, responding to the client's budget and also accounting for the differential movement of the existing slabs. So what we landed on was an epoxy floor, which was able to be installed over differing substrate conditions, and it also provided the continuous subtly textured floor plane throughout the interior space.
The primary relationships that were drawn through the site converge as a central space in the middle of the visitor centre, a place for gathering and interaction. With the kit of parts, we considered contrast to express the hierarchy of relationships that the visitor centre has. Being at the centre of these relationships, the gathering space uses a warm timber tone material palette as a contrast against the base monochrome palette. The curves and lightweight expression of the gathering space partition is differentiated from the rest of the interior, a warmer, softer space for gathering. The space is integrated with interactive AV and is intended as a more temporal and immersive exhibition format. Seating has also been incorporated into the central table to allow for small gatherings where stories and experiences can be shared.
So beyond the central gathering space is the central exhibition area, bounded by the main 4 walls of the project. And so with the insertion of these walls, it was important for us to maintain cohesion throughout the whole interior. Custom joinery with wall wash lighting was coordinated to give the walls a sense of thickness and also emphasise them as organising elements. However, the openings between these walls to adjacent spaces are kept wide and generous to maintain visual connections throughout the whole space.
The west wing. Outside of these four walls are the exhibition wings, and due to the irregular shape of the existing visitor centre envelope, these wings have slightly different spatial characteristics, which lend to different programmatic overlays and curatorial opportunities. The west wing is a triangular shaped space that draws a lot of natural light from the glazing that was retained, and likewise it also provides a high level of visibility from the street into the space.
So the north wing is the interface between the visitor centre and the club shop, which improves the retail shopfront exposure with its adjacency to the entry, forecourt and also the airlock. The north wing is adjacent to the club shop, and the club shop was largely kept in its original location as a cost-saving measure.
The east wing sits within the heritage protected envelope of the original pool. Wanting to reinforce the visitor centre's adjacency to the Olympic swimming pool, the original concrete soffit is left exposed as a point of difference to the consistent perforated plasterboard of the rest of the interior. We also tried uncovering as many views possible through the existing clear-story windows and glazed roof to the steel trusses that the pool is so well recognised for.
So being at the back of the visitor centre, the south wing becomes a casual dwell space and has its own connection to the car park through an existing glazed facade. So to conclude, we'll circle back to that original question of how we've provided for long-term regenerative use for this project. So I guess one thing to note is that the building has already gone through several iterations and several generations of different uses and occupants over almost 40 years of it being open. So a running theme throughout this design process was restraint. So restraint in the allocation of the budget, in the material palette and also the spatial arrangement throughout the project, acknowledging the different overlay that the occupant will provide. And so through this, we've created a kind of in-between space, a versatile interior that is made whole by its occupation, acknowledging that the forms of occupation and ownership may change in the